What if everything you see right now, this room, this screen, your own hands, is not physical reality at all? What if it is information, code, a simulation so perfect that the beings inside it cannot distinguish it from real? What if the universe itself is not made of matter, but of data, and the laws of physics are simply the rules of the program? This is not science fiction. It is a serious scientific and philosophical hypothesis being examined by some of the most rigorous thinkers alive. And the evidence for it, 3 specific pieces of evidence that the mainstream conversation almost always fails to address properly, is far more disturbing than most people realize. Once you understand these 3 pieces, you will not be able to look at reality the same way again. What the simulation hypothesis actually claims. Before the evidence, understand what is actually being proposed. Not the movie version, not the pop culture reduction, the actual claim. The simulation hypothesis, most rigorously formulated by philosopher Nick Bostrom in 2003, states that one of 3 things must be true. Either almost all civilizations at our level of development go extinct before reaching the technological capability to run detailed simulations of conscious beings, or almost all technologically advanced civilizations choose not to run such simulations, or we are almost certainly living inside a simulation right now. This is not a loose spiritual claim, it is a logical argument. If sufficiently advanced civilizations can run simulations of conscious experience, and if they run many of them, then the number of simulated conscious beings will vastly outnumber the number of beings in base reality, which means the statistical probability of being in base reality, rather than one of countless simulations, approaches 0. The argument is airtight unless one of the first 2 conditions is true, and here is what makes this deeply uncomfortable. There is increasing evidence, from physics, from mathematics, from the structure of reality itself, that the third option is not just possible. It may be unavoidable. Evidence 1. The universe behaves exactly like a simulation would. Here is the first piece of evidence, and it is not a metaphor. It is a structural observation about the nature of physical reality that physicists have been sitting with for decades without a satisfying non-simulation explanation. The universe has a maximum resolution, a minimum unit of space and time below which nothing can be measured, and, according to the best current physics, nothing exists. This unit is called the Planck length, approximately 1.6 times 10 to the power of negative 35 meters. Below this scale, space itself appears to break down, to become pixelated in the same way a digital image breaks down into discrete units when you zoom past its resolution limit. A continuous analog universe, a truly physical reality with no underlying information structure, would have no minimum resolution. Space would be infinitely divisible, but it is not. It has a pixel size, and that pixel size is exactly what you would expect if the universe were rendered at maximum resolution by a computational system processing information rather than generating physical matter. There is more. The universe also has a maximum speed, the speed of light. In a computational simulation, this makes immediate sense. Processing takes time. Information cannot propagate faster than the system can calculate. The speed of light is not a physical barrier in the traditional sense. It behaves exactly like a processing speed limit, a frame rate cap on the rendering of reality. And then there is quantum mechanics. The behavior of particles at the quantum level has puzzled physicists since the 1920s. Particles do not have definite properties until they are observed. They exist in superposition, in multiple states simultaneously, until measurement collapses them into a single defined state. This is not a measurement problem. It is a feature of how reality actually works at its most fundamental level. In a simulation, this is instantly intuitive. A sufficiently sophisticated simulation would not render the full detail of every particle in every location simultaneously. It would render only what is being observed, what the conscious beings inside the simulation are actually looking at. Everything else would remain in an unrendered superposition state, exactly as quantum mechanics describes. The universe appears to render only what is observed, to have a pixel size, to have a processing speed limit, 3 features that make no sense in a purely physical universe. 3 features that make perfect sense in a simulation. Evidence 2. Mathematics describes reality with impossible precision. Here is the second piece of evidence, and it is one that has haunted mathematicians and physicists for over a century. Mathematics is a product of human minds. It is invented by thinking beings, working with abstract symbols and logical rules. It has no necessary connection to physical reality. A mathematician working on pure abstract theory, exploring the properties of complex numbers, or the geometry of higher dimensional spaces, or the behavior of certain equations, is not trying to describe the physical world. They are exploring abstract structure for its own sake. And yet, with a regularity that has no satisfying explanation, the abstract mathematical structures developed by pure mathematicians with no applied purpose in mind turn out sometimes decades later to describe physical reality with perfect precision. The non-Euclidean geometry developed in the 1800s as a pure mathematical curiosity became the exact framework Einstein needed for general relativity. Complex numbers, invented to solve equations that had no real solutions, turned out to be the fundamental language of quantum mechanics. The mathematics of symmetry groups, developed purely abstractly, turned out to perfectly describe the behavior of subatomic particles. Physicist Eugene Wigner called this the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. He had no explanation for it. Neither does anyone else. A physical universe that arose from random physical processes has no reason to be perfectly described by abstract mathematical structures that human minds invented independently. The agreement is too precise, too complete. But a simulated universe, a universe that is fundamentally mathematical in nature, a universe that is made of information and runs on mathematical rules, would be perfectly described by mathematics. Because mathematics would not be describing it from the outside. Mathematics would be what it is made of. The unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics is not unreasonable in a simulation. It is inevitable. Evidence 3. The fine-tuning of physical constants is mathematically absurd. Here is the third piece of evidence, and it is the one that the most serious physicists find hardest to dismiss. The universe runs on approximately 26 fundamental physical constants: the strength of gravity, the mass of the electron, the cosmological constant, the ratio of electromagnetic force to gravitational force. These constants are not derived from any deeper theory. They are simply measured. They are what they are, and they are set to values that appear to have been chosen with extraordinary precision. If the strength of gravity were slightly stronger, stars would burn out too quickly for life to evolve. If it were slightly weaker, matter would never coalesce into stars and planets at all. If the cosmological constant, the energy density of empty space, were even fractionally larger than it is, the universe would have expanded too rapidly for structure to form. The values are balanced against each other with a precision that physicists describe as fine-tuning, and the degree of fine-tuning is not slight, it is astronomical. Physicist Lee Smolin calculated that the probability of the physical constants landing in the life-permitting range by random chance is approximately 1 in 10 to the power of 229. That number is not large. It is incomprehensible. It is a number so far beyond any scale that exists in the physical universe that random chance as an explanation requires more faith than any alternative. The mainstream physics response to fine-tuning is the multiverse, the hypothesis that all possible sets of physical constants exist in different universes, and we simply find ourselves in one compatible with our existence. This is mathematically valid. It is also entirely unverifiable and unfalsifiable. The simulation response to fine-tuning is simpler. A programmer setting the parameters of a simulation would set them to values that produce the desired outcome: life, complexity, consciousness. The fine-tuning is not random chance. It is not an infinite multiverse. It is a deliberate parameter choice by whoever or whatever designed the simulation. And the precision of the tuning, the extraordinary care with which each constant is balanced against every other, looks far more like intentional design than random accident. What this means if it is true. If we are living in a simulation, what follows? The first implication is that whoever is running the simulation is incomprehensibly more advanced than us. Not slightly more advanced, incomprehensibly, godlike in capability, capable of designing and running a universe containing hundreds of billions of galaxies, each containing hundreds of billions of stars, as a program. The second implication is that there may be no fundamental difference between the concepts of creation and simulation. If a sufficiently advanced intelligence runs a simulation populated by conscious beings, beings who experience joy and suffering and meaning and love, then in what sense is that not a real creation? In what sense are those beings not real? The third implication is the one nobody wants to sit with. If this is a simulation, it can be paused, rewound, edited, ended. The existential security that comes from believing in a physical universe governed by fixed laws, the feeling that reality is solid and permanent, dissolves completely. Or it opens something else. The possibility that existence is not the cold, mechanical accident it sometimes appears to be. That there is something behind the rendering. Something that set the parameters. Something that is watching. If you reach this moment, write in the comments the word code, and tell us, after these 3 pieces of evidence, do you believe this is a simulation? We want to know where you stand. Subscribe and turn on the bell, because the next video reveals the 4th piece of evidence, the one that even the physicists who dismiss the simulation hypothesis find most difficult to explain away. Until then, look around you and ask yourself, does this feel like the base level?